Hi, welcome back. This is Valerie from A Stitch in Life. So this is the project where I knocked off my daughter's existing dress and made her a Cookie Monster one that she wanted. So this dress just has serge seams. As you can see, they're small. And actually that even has like this elastic put into the seam so it can keep its shape. It's not necessary though. So I'm going to use a pattern that I am making. Obviously, I'm using the dress to knock off. And this pattern paper is the paper that you get in, say I use No Steam, in your Amazon packages. So you can press paper, just obviously no water like I just showed you. But you should be able to press it pretty well and press out the creases as much as you can. So then you take the garment and you lay it on the pattern. Best way to do it is fold it in half and just do half a pattern so that you know it'll be symmetrical, it'll be the same on both sides. And I'm going to use the edge of the paper to make the edge of my garment so that I don't have to draw a straight line. The paper already has a straight line for me on the edge. I'm just lining up the shoulders and the waist seam, trying to make it as even as possible. And I'm using a pencil here and just drawing the neckline, the shoulder seam, the armhole, and the side seam. And this is going to be the back piece. The back on the neck is always higher, right? Because you have your neck in the front, so it'll be lower in the front. So I only did half the pattern, as you can see. I used my ruler to square it up to make it straight. And then I will do the front pattern and measure the two together. I know it's kind of hard to see here because I'm using pencil, but I will eventually mark it in marker and you can see it easier. I'm kind of eyeballing it. It's easier for kids' patterns as well because they're going to be pretty simple as opposed to adult patterns who have darts and seams and everything. And I draw the seam line and where the center back, that is the center back pattern. I put CB on there. I'm just going to cut it out and then do the front pattern. And this is from years of experience too, making these patterns. But you can measure it several times against the original garment to make sure that it's going to be the same. So I'm writing the side seam. I'm writing how much seam allowance, like 1/4 of an inch for each seam. I don't have to really add too much more to the pattern because it's stretch and it's small and my daughter's small, so. And then this is the front, and I need that little wheel so to do the neckline because the neckline is lower in the front, as you can see. So I could either just peel back see, I'm marking the center front and the shoulder at the neck, and then I'm using that little wheel to just poke through, and it'll poke the paper, it'll perforate it, and then you can just draw that line, and it gives you a good exact measurement there. So that's the front. I'll make sure that I mark the waist, where the waist is. I'm using a simple dress, so it doesn't take that much time. I'm measuring the side seam, making sure that the front and the back are going to match at the side seam. You don't want one to be longer. Also at the shoulder, you want that to match. And like I said, the neck is going to be different, and the armhole will be different too because of your movement in your arms. You're going to have a deeper armhole in the front and than in the back. So I just kind of divided the unevenness of the shoulder. Sorry if you hear kids scream in the background. We're actually at a park, so they're running around with my husband and I. So yeah, just check and double check again. I'm truing it up, making sure the waistline is straight, the side seam is straight, the shoulder is straight, and then at the center front for about 1/8 of an inch, that is very straight at the neckline there. Otherwise you'll get a point. And also the arm side has a nice curve to it. I'm writing down that this is what the dress is, or what this bodice is for. That there's a center front, and that I have to cut it on the fold, all my seam allowance. And then I'm going to cut that out. And then I check again, making sure that if you put it together at the side seam, that the armhole there is a nice curve. It's going to sit a little bit sideways, like towards the front, and that it's the same on the bottom, because you don't want some weird point there or it not to match up. Straight sewing starts with straight cutting of the pattern. Next, I measure the length of the skirt and the width too, how long it needs to be. And then I'm just going to cut a strip of fabric. I'm not going to make a pattern since it is just a very long rectangle. I just will write down that measurement on the front of the pattern pieces. I mean, on the front bodice piece. It's good to, so that's 58 inches. It's good to write down how many pattern pieces you have. So if you're missing one, you'll know, oh wait, it says here that there's, 6 pattern pieces. And I'm not going to include a skirt because there's not a skirt pattern piece. It's just a measurement. So in this pattern, there's only 2 pattern pieces, which I put 2 of 2 on that, as you can see. I wrote those little circles. That means it's on the fold, center front, and cut 1. And then Elsie's dress, center back. That symbol means on the fold. Cut 1 on the fold. I write that too. Skirt, cut 58 wide by 15 long. So, yep, that's how you do that. And I'm not going to do the little arm ruffle piece. I decided to just do like this little binding thing on the edge and serge it on. This is my fabric. This is the Cookie Monster fabric. It's just a teal blue. It's a t-shirt sheet that I got at the thrift store, actually. And it does stretch. And I want to make sure that I'm putting it on the best stretch around her body. That needs to be more stretch than up and down. But this fabric seems to be both ways, is stretchy. And I can actually put my pattern pieces like this because this fabric does not have like a pattern. When I first started sewing, excuse me, I made this robot shirt, this kid's shirt, and I didn't think about the direction of the pattern on the fabric. And on the body, the robots are all facing the right direction, but on the arms, they were upside down. So that is a common mistake. And I'm showing you the hem here. I'm going to keep that hem and use that hem. So you always have to think about it. Which way is the pattern going? But that fabric has no pattern and it looks the same both ways. that I'm using. I'm going to cut out the top of the sheet, the fold over, and then I'm going to just keep the hem of the sheet as the hem of her skirt. It's already done. I don't need to redo it. It's done for me. So I'm measuring how tall I want it to be, putting a mark there, and then I'm going to mark it along the sheet. I was taught this method by a teacher that I had when I was in my 20s, when I first started getting back into sewing. And it's not perfect, but it works for me, instead of storing and having giant pattern pieces. They're kind of harder to measure and to keep folded up as well. So here are the pattern pieces. One long skirt, it's folded in half, and then the front and the back. And if you needed to label these, if you couldn't tell, you can put a piece of Scotch tape on there, or tape, and write the pattern piece on there so you know it's what. And so I serged the shoulders and the side seams, and then also serged the side of the skirt. I didn't need to show you that. Then I put a gather stitch on the top of the skirt, and I just fold it in quarters, fold it in half, and fold it in half again to mark the front, the back, and the side seams. It's easier than just measuring. Then you'll get, it's quicker, really. Everything's about being faster with sewing, especially if you're working for people or working in theater or something like that. You have to be really fast at it. So I gathered it to the bodice, and I just do one gathering stitch about 1/4 of an inch away from, the edge of it. You can do 2. With knits, they tend to break sometimes, so that's up to you. It's hard to gather 2 sometimes. It's easier just to do 1. So there it is. It's all sewn together, and you could serge that waist seam or not. I didn't think it needed to be finished like that. So I am going to put I was just showing you that's where I'm going to put the Cookie Monster pouch. So I go back to do a binding using my chalk pencil and a ruler. You do need that because it needs to be precise on how much you are cutting. The fabric needs to have more of the stretch. Actually, both ways stretch really well, so it didn't really matter. But I marked it, and I'm cutting, I think it was 1 inch wide strip, and then I'm going to fold that in half and basically make your own bias binding, but it's not bias. It's what is used like on the tops of t-shirts, especially vintage t-shirts, around the neck and around the armhole. And then I'm serging that on. You just have to make sure that when you're putting this kind of a finish on there, that you are not twisting the binding, that you are making it completely flat and fold it right in half, and kind of pat it down and pin it on there. I make the circle first and sew the ends together, and then I pin it. You'll see. I know it's kind of hard to describe unless it's visually in front of you. And I did this kind of finish on both the neckline and the armholes so that it's consistent. You could make it taller than 1 inch. It's up to you. But if you make it too big, right at the shoulder on the neck, it'll start to stick out funny. But look what happened. My serger thread is all loopy. There's something wrong. I didn't check it. And look, my son was over here playing, and yeah, he turned them all to 3, which is funny. He was consistent, but it did mess up the serging, that turkey. So always check your tensions, especially if you have kids. I just serged right over the existing serge. I didn't try to take it out because of that fact. Oh man. Anyways, so it turned out really well, I think. I like the finished product. It looks a little twisted, but it's not. It just needs to be pressed. It's just wrinkled. So that's the neckline. And then I'll do that to the armholes. And I did that. I didn't show you that, but this is the finished product. I really like this kind of finish, especially on knits. You just have to make sure that it fits in there well. Otherwise, it's going to droop or stick out funny. I'm guessing that's probably why I did a smaller one. And you can also make it a tiny bit smaller than the neck hole, and it'll kind of pinch it in a little bit and not droop. So here's the patch. It is an iron-on, dang it. All patches are iron-ons, but guess what? You can peel that stuff off, especially if it's just pressed on there and it's not embedded into the embroidery. You can peel it off. It gums up your machine sewing it, first of all, but it also makes the patch really stiff and kind of funky looking. So there it is. I peeled it all off. It's not that hard. It's really easy. And that's the stuff. Blech. Yuck. And here's the finished product. Look how cute she is. Thank you for watching.